Good evening, everybody. My name is Sarah Shearer. I'm the president of the Albany Public Library Board of Trustees, and I call our March meeting to order. If we could pull up the roll call so everyone can introduce themselves.
Hi, Dr. Brenda Robinson, Vice President, Board.
Tom McCarthy, Vice President for Finance.
Like I said, Jenna is going to be late this evening if she's able to make it.
Hi, I'm Arlene Way. I'm Chair of the Nominating Committee.
Sarah Dallas, Trustee.
Bridget Pryor, Trustee.
Jerry Goers, Trustee.
And Donna Dixon, Trustee.
Sean Smith is our treasurer.
Melanie Metzger, Interim Director.
Adam Stump, Budget Manager.
Bill Gazo, Administrative Assistant.
Bob Schofield is our attorney. And I do want to mention we have our three heads of branches with us, if they could take their turns introducing themselves.
I'm Mary Kuhn. I am head of the Central Branches, which is the Washington Avenue branch, and the Arbor Hill West Hill branch.
I'm Deanna DiCarlo. I'm head of the West Branches, which includes Pine Hills and Bach.
And I'm Rebecca Lubin. I'm the head of the East Branches, which includes Delaware, Howe, and North Albany.
Thank you, everybody. Our next order of business is public comment.
We have not received any public comment. If anyone from the Deanna DiCarlo, I'm head of the West. Oops, sorry. If anyone from the public wishes to make a comment, you are asked to send an email to publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org or leave a voicemail at 518-290-6905. Both accounts are monitored at all times. Please leave your name and address to identify yourself, and all public comments are read, during designated times of the meeting, and there will be one more opportunity just before adjournment.
Thank you, Rebecca. Our next item of business is our consent agenda. That includes our minutes from our last two meetings, our regular February board meeting, as well as our February 22nd meeting to discuss the budget, as well as our operating check register and our capital fund check register. If anybody would like to make a motion on the consent agenda.
I make a motion to accept.
Thank you, Brenda. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Sarah. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, can we vote in board docs?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, you should be able to. I'm opening it right now.
Okay.
Okay.
As long as you're logged in, of course. Please state your vote.
I vote yes.
Thank you. I'm to get it to share. I got so many screens. Share my scoreboard.
And the motion carries. Consent agenda is adopted. Thank you. Our next order of business are the financial reports.
Hello, I'll start with the finance memo. The reports this month cover January 2022, which is 58% of the way through our 21-22 fiscal year. The total expenditures on the reports show that we're 50% of our modified budget, with payroll and the related costs trending under budget and the occupancy costs trending over budget. The pilot payment was received in January. The payment was $31,000 more than what was budgeted for. We are continuing to report a negative interest income total due to the unrealized losses on our investments. And the IT showed a net reduction in expenditures during January. I'll turn it over to Adam to fill in some of the other points.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Just a couple of details here. So our national grid costs during January were the highest we've seen since 2014, as energy supply costs increased dramatically during the month. We have received the first national grid bill for February, and while the rates did decrease, they are still higher than what they were in 2021. We received a reimbursement in January for computers that were purchased in October of 2021, hence the net reduction in IT hardware expenditures. And we were charged almost $5,000 in annual bank fees in January. It was determined that a slight restructuring of our bank accounts would allow us to avoid most of these fees going forward. We have since made the necessary changes to the accounts. And additionally, our bank has agreed to refund us the full amount of the fees that we were charged, which will be reflected on next month's reports. So if anyone has any questions on any of the reports or any of these statements, please feel free to ask.
Thank you for working to sort out the bank fees.
What does the negative interest income actually mean again?
So we have actually generated interest income. It's just that our unrealized losses on our investments are factored into that line. If you go back and look at our audits from past years, you can see on the statement of revenue and expenditures, they break it out separately. We actually have finished a fiscal year several years back with a negative interest income line for this same reason. So unfortunately, this may be another one of those years.
Any other financial questions for Adam and Sean? All right, thank you both. Our next item, committee and liaison reports. Trustees reporting out and upcoming events. Is there anything any of the trustees would like to share regarding your interactions with the library this past month? All right. The first report, UHLS Liaison Report. Arlene, if you would like to share that with us.
Arlene, you're muted.
I was just talking away. Okay, so just some brief updates. The financial specialist position was posted. They changed the title of it from financial specialist to bookkeeper, hoping that it would generate some additional increase, some additional interest for that opportunity. And that they listed an opportunity for adult and outreach services coordinator or manager position. So they posted that, and I guess they're looking to hear back. They've made a commitment that member libraries will be represented on the search committee. Advocacy Day was virtual. Again, that was March 2nd. And while we experienced a slight increase in the preliminary budget for libraries, the budget for construction aid was slashed from 34 million to 14 million. So, you know, that's going to be a point of concern and work for us with regard to getting those funds restored. We reviewed and approved the Finance Committee's report unanimously. And just, and I guess the equity, the racial equity training that the board, UHLS board had committed to is going to be put into motion this month. We're going to start. We've agreed to go with the five session option. And then, you know, there were some reports from trustees about eliminating fines, successful program that was held by East Greenbush, and the display that Valley Falls had for Black History Month. And we closed our session at 5:30. We're virtual tomorrow. And pretty much that's it.
Thank you, Arlene. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you, Arlene. And I see the next committee is personnel. Without Jenna, I don't mind going over it. And then Tom, if you want to add in anything else, that would be great. Okay. So we met as the personnel committee to identify 2 job descriptions that we wanted to work on changes for. We selected the part-time library clerk and the account clerk job descriptions. After the meeting, we actually worked on editing the part-time library clerk position online through Google Docs. And we also selected representatives to attend the Civil Service Commission meeting, which happened. I believe Jenna attended that, as well as Diana.
Diana.
Sorry. Yeah, okay, thank you. And we plan on meeting again as a committee to go over those changes to the job descriptions and then bring it to the full board. And then hopefully bring it to the Civil Service Commission to approve. Tom, is there anything you want to add?
No, I don't think so. I think you covered it.
Any questions on the Personnel Committee meeting? All right. The next committee is Policy and Governance.
Thank you. We met on February 15th. And thank you, Rebecca, for pulling together the minutes. We had some unfinished business, and we're still discussing the art exhibition, and we'll continue discussing it next week. And we are going to be bringing up as new business of the form to do an art submission. We decided to adopt the art reconsideration form that'll come up. The hazardous materials resolution was shared with legal counsel, and some additions have been added and language updated. And we are suggesting that it be approved as simple review to approve as written. And we also reviewed the board meeting absence, and we reviewed it, and we made a motion to approve as a simple review, meaning there's nothing additional needs to be added to it. And we had a discussion about the behavior policy, and that needs a little bit more work. We want to try to get it less ambiguous and clearer. And we would like to have staff share their input regarding marijuana, gambling, weapons, and even just the word loud. My definition of loud might be different than Melanie's definition of loud. And in different parts of the building, it might mean something as well. There was no executive session, and we adjourned. And we also have, as part of new business, I'm trying to get back, that we are going to look, as I said, at the art, the form for art reconsideration later in the meeting. Any questions? Jarrett, Brigitte, did I forget anything?
Can I make a clarification?
Please do.
So what is coming up for full board approval this evening is the art reconsideration form that needs to be adopted because that's a new form completely. And the hazardous communications or hazardous materials policy did have updates. It wasn't a simple review. There were
significant revisions, actually.
There were significant revisions to that. So that one's being with the revisions that you guys approved.
Right, we approved the revisions as suggested by council, but it does need to be approved by the full board.
Correct. So that one's on the agenda for later as well to be voted upon.
And it's very colorful. Thank you.
Melanie, I don't see it on the agenda under new business.
Refresh your screen. We realized it was it was added to the minutes, but it wasn't added to there was a miscommunication. So we just added it right before the meeting. I just did it myself and it is there. It is 8.5.
Okay. And I think we keep shifting things around on the agenda.
There was a couple notices from our legal counsel today that things had to be shifted because there's a specific order certain things had to go into.
I just did adjusted a rearrangement less than 5 minutes ago.
So are there any questions for Sarah or the Policy and Governance Committee before we move to our next committee report? Seeing none. Facilities Committee.
Okay, we met on February 23rd. And Adam, myself, Dr. Brenda Robinson, and Sarah Dallas. Adam Freiberg, he provided pictures to demonstrate the current status of North Albany. He also gave us an update on the door. There's a temporary door installed now because the permanent door wasn't ordered when he thought it was. So there's still a delay on it. So it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks until we receive the permanent door, but the temporary door is there. So once the new door is installed, Adam will coordinate the
Bridget, I believe your sound went out. So it's showing you're talking, but we lost your sound.
APL's input. And then also he gave us an update on the Washington Avenue project. The brawlers have been removed from the pedestals and abatement is complete. The new installation around the pipes and new pumps are being installed, which will improve the effectiveness. And the Fireberg explained that the Adam explained that the rooftop unit that brings the fresh air in is located in the garage. It's not really, it's not a great idea. So it was moved to the roof. So this is approximately 20 weeks from the completion, since a new air handler will be ordered and the pumps need to be changed out. So this project is anticipated to be completed before the end of the summer. Then he also gave us the BOC update on the staff office build. It's a staff office that's complete and the furniture has been selected. And Pine Hills had a small renovation completed internally for the new branch manager to set up their office. And it wasn't any new business. We didn't go into executive session and we adjourned at 6:21.
Any questions for Brigitte and the Facilities Committee? All right. The next committee report is the Nominating Committee.
Okay, so we did not have any public comment. Our team, though, we got a lot accomplished, and that we're paving the way for the recruitment and the whole election process for new trustees. We spent the time reviewing our recruitment plan. We discussed our recruitment plan and groups and organizations we would target as part of the process. We established dates for the informational session that we will hold and make available for folk who might be interested or in considering running for trustee. We established a date for that as April 5th, and it's going to be live streamed and recorded. Live streamed, and we're going to be and recorded. We also discussed the process for the forum and the tools that we're going to need. So the forum is going to be live and in person, and we'll have opportunity for people who cannot attend the session to be able to join us remotely to ask their questions. We did not have an executive session. but we have some meetings coming up pretty soon to continue the work. Our next meeting is going to be on the 16th. If there are board members that have ideas about groups that need to be communicated with in their effort to make our organization more inclusive, please get that information to us as soon as possible so that those groups can be included in our outreach. That's it. And I want to say thank you for the people that I'm working with. I have to tell you that my team members, Dr. Robinson and Donna Dixon, are absolutely amazing. And I very much appreciate the assistance that we receive from Rebecca and from Melanie. They're making our jobs easier, and I'm just so grateful for this team completely. They've been wonderful.
I second the thanks for Melanie and Rebecca. It was really a pleasure having that meeting with you, and we did get a lot done.
Ditto.
You guys made it easy. Thank you.
I have a quick question. 3.02, what does ED stand for, please?
Executive Director.
No, it's actually supposed to be EC, Executive Committee meeting.
Oh.
It
Oh,
wasn't.
yeah.
The thing is that we want to create an inclusive process. And so we want to make sure that everyone on our board can consider themselves or see opportunities for them to be on the executive committee at some point. We're not going to do anything about this. This was something that we set aside for right now because what we want to do is get through the process of, you know, getting organized for recruiting members to run for, recruiting people to run for trustee positions. But once we're done with that work, we're going to have some conversation about what we can do to create a more inclusive environment where members will be interested in running for executive committee positions.
I'm wondering, it sounds like you had a really productive meeting. Could you just share with us some of the target organizations to recruit that you came up with?
Well, we're still making the list. It won't be final to the end of the week. But of course, the neighborhood associations. Okay, so there was a list of organizations, and we'll be looking to add the NAACP, the Urban League, groups that work with Hispanic and Latino organizations. We want to be as inclusive and reflective of Albany's population as possible. So again, if you guys have some ideas about folks who are missing from our table and who have been historically not present at our table, we're asking you to, you know, share that information with us.
Thank you, Arlene.
Any other questions for Arlene and the nominating committee? All right, next committee is the Ad Hoc Strategic Plan Committee. So our committee met and we had one item of new business, and that was reviewing an RFP for a strategic plan consultant. So we walked through the RFP page by page, section by section, made the necessary updates. Some of the language is just standard language across all of our RFPs, but we made sure it reflected the strategic consultant position. We set deadlines for when we expect proposals back by. And that was our meeting. And this will be RFP for the strategic plan consultant is also listed under new business for the full board to approve tonight so that we can post it. Any questions? All right, and again, we can also discuss this under new business as well when we take up the RFP. The next committee report is Executive Committee. The Executive Committee met and we had 2 items under new business. First was approving the board clerk job description. As we discussed in our prior board meeting, we approved the job description, and this is also listed under new business for the board to review and possibly approve tonight. And we also decided to lift the mask mandate. I had emailed the entire board just wanting to make sure that it was okay. We took this up in an existing executive committee meeting that was already on the schedule, given the requests we received from staff that came up quite suddenly. So we were able to take this up in executive committee and make the decision. But we also will be reviewing changes to the POP tonight, the Pandemic Operations Plan, that touches on how a mask mandate may work going forward. And I'll let Melanie get into that when we get to that section of the meeting. Are there any questions on the executive committee meeting? But both of these items, again, will be coming up under new business and updates to the POP. All right. And our last committee report is.
I'm sorry, quick question.
Okay, yep.
I don't see on new business a specific item to ratify that executive committee action. And since it wasn't a specific delegation, that might not be a bad idea.
Okay.
You know, just at the appropriate time, maybe as 8/11, just have the board ratify that since it hadn't been specifically delegated to you all.
Thank you. And then last committee report is Audit and Finance Committee.
Hi, we met in between the special budget meeting and this meeting. We met once and we talked about what was said at the special budget meeting, and we made a recommendation to bring a proposed budget to this board meeting tonight. That budget will have a 2.5 tax percentage increase. We're going to talk about that a lot more under new business. And our discussion is, I think, pretty well encapsulated by the minutes that are on the screen now. But we'll also elaborate on that discussion under new business as well. And that was the only item on our agenda for that meeting.
Thank you, Tom. And I think we can, like you said, discuss that under budget discussion, which I'm trying to make the most time for tonight. Moving on, our next item is the director's report.
So sure, I'll go through my summary as always. In February for COVID-19, we did have one staff member test positive, so that was a reduction, which we were very thankful for. And with the governor and the CDC's updates to their protocols and guidelines, we are recommending adjusting our pandemic operation plan and continuation of services plan to reflect those changes and to allow for return to normal procedures and normal operations. Our services and programs is always my favorite part to report on. We had a very creative month with our virtual programming, and we continue to find ways to engage our patrons during our virtual sessions. So our children, as you can see, created snow pals that then were able to have a sleepover in the library. And if you followed our social media, you could see their hijinks. It was quite adorable, all the stuff that they got to do in the library overnight. We have our cooking series, Dax Dishes, with the Adirondack Experience Museum. They hosted 2 more events in February, which were well received, and people are having a lot of fun with those programs. And I'd like to mention, if you're unhappy with the current state of affairs, you could look into future state of affairs. We had a cartomancy program that allowed and taught individuals how to do fortune telling with a regular deck of playing cards. And that was so well received, I think we've had to do that a second time as well. So operations, as was stated in the facilities report, our construction projects are nearing completion, and we do have the temporary door installed at North Albany. This will allow us at least to start beginning to move in our materials and some of the furnishings in preparation. So when we do get the regular storefront, the permanent storefront, we'll be able to do a quicker turnaround for opening on that. So we're hoping for a late spring opening. I know we were hoping early spring, but now it got pushed back to late spring, but it's still spring. So we're happy with that. Administration, we are a little saddened to say that March 4th was Marjorie Reinhardt's last official working day with us after a multi-decades career with us. We have hired a new director of HR. That person will begin on March 21st. So we're excited to see what she'll bring to the table. We do continue to see a large number of vacancies throughout the organization as part of the nationwide Great Resignation event. People are just realizing there's other opportunities and they are exploring those. And then, as we mentioned, the slowdown in civil service processes because the city civil service department is understaffed. So we are, while we have a couple positions open and we can move forward on them, we are beholden to some of the processes with civil service department. And we have been warned that we could see, at least with a process that takes 3 weeks, might now take 4 because they are so short-staffed. Our statistics are continuing to remain steady. Door count numbers are pretty much leveling off. They've been pretty static and stable for the last 4 months. March will be the next telling month because we are hoping to ease our restrictions a little bit. So we're hoping to see some additional improvement on those. Overall circulation is almost at the same amount for the 3-year average, which was including our last month before the pandemic impacted our metrics. So I saw that as very promising. Going forward, we have more months with the pandemic hit included on it, but February 2020 was before the pandemic hit. So to see that our circulation numbers are inching up closer to those numbers is really nice. And e-media is actually creeping away from being 1/3 of our total circulation, and it's now about 1/4 of our total circulation. So while it's still quite high, the fact that it's leveling off and we're seeing more physical material circulating is very positive. Safety, once again, I unfortunately have to state, as a reflection of what has also been going on throughout the city, APL has also experienced an uptick in incidents involving youth. In the last month, we had 10 loss of library privileges in total, with 7 youth, or 7 of those incidents being youth that were fighting in the library. So we're hoping to nip that in the bud a little bit more. We have seen a little bit of progress with it, but essentially it's the same, like 7 individuals that are rotating between branches, and that's why they lost their library privileges. And we did have 3 adults lose the library privileges for them having multiple incidences of verbal harassment of staff. So we gave them a couple chances, and after the 3rd chance of verbally harassing staff, we told them they have to give us a break for a couple months before they're allowed back in. And that's the end of my summary. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Melanie? It just seems like you covered everything, Melanie.
Try to be thorough. That's okay.
Just a comment that it's an awful lot happening all at once. And, you know, I'm sorry to hear about the safety incidents, but, you know, the rest of it is all good news and doing a lot. So thank you.
I guess I should balance the fact that the safety incidences, the adult incidents of mask issues has gone down. Just the youth are.
Yeah.
It's spring. We always do see an uptick at the beginning of spring as the weather gets nicer. So it's not unheard of, but it's just something that with our reduction of services over the last 2 years, we really had to deal with. So it's a reminder that we're coming back to normalcy, just not in a way we want it to.
Thank you, Melanie. I think we can move on to new business. And the first item is reviewing the strategic planning consultant RFP. If you could go to, I don't remember if it's page 2 or 3, the bullet points of what we're asking the consultant to consider. Yeah, there it is, scope of services. So we did spend some time during our meeting just so the board is aware of what we're asking this consultant to do. We added the first bullet point, second bullet point, acquire an understanding of Albany Public Library's position, policies, procedures, and initiatives to advance the strategic planning process, because we thought it was important that a strategic consultant come in and not only survey our staff and members of the public, but also be really familiar with the current operating policies and practices of the library, so that we can get an appropriately drafted plan that, you know, if we're looking for a 3-year strategic plan, we don't want the bar set so low that we're completing it in 6 months. But we really want a consultant that takes in all of the information and really drafts an appropriate plan that will challenge APL and bring us to the next level. So really these bullet points are what we're asking from our consultant for our strategic plan. I can take any questions on this, and I can also, well, there's already been a motion on the table since the committee approved this. We're just looking for a second, and then we can vote to approve it.
So didn't our last consultant, wasn't the final deliverable a template of a strategic plan?
Are you talking about not our last strategic plan consultant, but our last consultants who delivered the DEI plan?
Yes.
So our consultants that worked on the DEI plan gave us a draft DEI plan that was in a very, very similar format to a strategic plan. And it was recommended to the board from our prior executive director that we consider making it a strategic plan. That's something that we've discussed as the ad hoc strategic plan committee. We just feel like there's additional research that needs to take place in order to actually implement that plan in a way that, again, appropriately challenges the library. That plan was provided off of feedback from staff and patrons, which is really helpful. But there were some areas where I had questions because I wasn't sure if like certain internal operating procedures were checked against them yet. My concern was I saw some of the objectives in that plan and I said, oh, you know, definitely want to get on this. But my concern was, what if this already exists and it's just a marketing thing? So we don't have to create it. It already exists in the library, but we need to get it out there better so people know it exists. But that would take considerably less time than if it was something we actually had to create. So I just want to make sure before we adopt a plan that we know everything that's in existence.
And didn't we also from time to time talk about not hiring a consultant until we had an executive director?
I don't remember. I know we've sort of talked about the idea. I thought, and if somebody remembers this differently, please correct me. I thought the conversation was, we're planning this to be a longer process, spanning many months. So we're thinking that if we bring someone on, the executive director will probably follow shortly thereafter. So they will also be involved in the process as well. I saw Sarah's hand, but Melanie, did you have a recollection of that conversation?
No, I have something to add after Sarah speaks.
Go ahead, Sarah.
This plan of service is really needing to be a community-based plan of service. What does the community need from the library? So I'm going to say two things. The first thing is, it's not really the executive director that decides what the community needs. It really needs to be the community telling the board and the staff what's needed to support what's going on in our wonderful city. The reason I keep on bringing up a community-based plan of service is that's the way it's written in the minimum standards. And I don't see anything in this particular document that you shared with us, Sarah, that addresses how it's going to be a community-based plan of service.
Sorry, I just need to pull it up on another window so I can see it.
And that's what makes the city of Albany unique, that the reason we want to live here and some of us work here and raised our families here and all of that, it's because we have a very vibrant community. And I really want somebody who can do the work to capture and to talk to the important stakeholders. I don't want this to be, and nor should it be, the group of us and the staff talking among ourselves. So I don't understand why benchmarking and environmental scans of the library industry, we're different than Guilderland, we're different than Saratoga Springs, we're different than Buffalo.
I would draw your attention to the third bullet point. Assist with the design and implementation of focus groups, surveys, and other information gathering techniques with library administration staff, patrons, and other stakeholders to determine the direction of the library in the next 3 to 5 years. So we are asking for focus groups among patrons and other stakeholders.
Because it's not only the people that, you've done a wonderful job, you really have. And I know this isn't easy work to do, but I really want to impress. The first thing would be gathering information from the community, not the staff, not us. If that makes any sense, and I'll be quiet.
No, that does make sense. I appreciate that. I have to change my view because I can only see one person. Brenda?
Oh, thanks, Sarah. Thank you for clarifying as well and sharing that point in regards to the forms that is in this RFP. I'm also happy to see the RFP because it provides some opportunity, transparency, I think, which is very important as opposed to using same consultants over and over. And again, opportunity is very important in transparency. So this is a good move. I think you all did, everyone did a good job putting it together. And thanks.
Thank you. Melanie?
So what I was going to allude to is the tangible developments of diversity and inclusion and equity plan that was presented previously was a document that was predominantly not only created by staff. I don't believe there was a huge amount of patron input into it. And there was also the, it was really about the internal operations of the library rather than the outgoing programming, facilities and stuff. So we felt that that plan, to speak to what Tom was asking about, could be used as part of a strategic plan. There could be aspects of it included in our strategic plan, but that document in and of itself should have never have been a full strategic plan because it was missing so much. And that's why we're going for a different approach with it. It laid a good groundwork. It will be a good piece of that information gathering. I think a lot of information was gathered from it and can be utilized, but it shouldn't be a strategic plan in and of itself.
Arlene?
Yes, Sarah, just wanted to say that your concern, we all agreed with, that this should be community focused and community facing and community driven. So that is what we're looking at. And when we talk about having focus forums, we're looking at embracing as many people and segments of our community as possible so that we can get it right. Next.
Tom?
So this is starting to make more sense. Now I'm starting to realize the type of consultant we're seeking here. But to Sarah's point, like when consulting agencies receive this RFP, are they going to understand what we're looking for? Like we're looking for someone to like lead public meetings and direct the conversation in like community meetings and stuff, in addition to doing the work of like putting it all together in combination with, you know, distilling it and you know, creating a report or whatever final product in collaboration with us. But is all that captured in this document?
I'd like to think it's inherently known a bit just with it being a strategic plan. I mean, a strategic plan for an organization such as ours would include all of that by the nature of what the strategic plan for libraries are.
I also think, sorry, Melanie, I also think having this RFP that we have opportunity to ask questions as well. So this RFP is not the end all be all. Someone sends something in and we automatically have that particular consultant. So I don't think it just stops at this particular document. So the more in-depth community piece that we're looking for. I also want to thank Sarah for her comments as well, because I totally agree with you as well. But it doesn't just stop with this document. We still interview this person, which is great to have this RFP and to change the way we do business and offer an opportunity. And the opportunity works both ways because it gives us an opportunity to make sure that we have a good fit in a consultant.
And that's actually why I know when we had the meeting, we were talking about adding that second bullet point as number one. But I felt, I apologize to Sarah, because she had mentioned about it being number one, the acquired, the understanding of Albany Public Library position. But I felt that first part, the initial meeting with the strategic planning committee Board of Trustees and the executive director or interim director was vital to have that conversation first before then to see what direction we're looking for that person to go into. So having that, that's why I specifically had that, left that as number one, because I felt that conversation needed to happen first before the acquiring of the other information as well. So they didn't waste their time on looking at information that you guys didn't want to give as much or looking for the credence of the information that you wanted to focus on rather than something that they thought was important first.
Donna?
Thanks. One suggestion that I would have to try and address some of the concerns and things that were raised during the discussion is in that third bullet point, so that we can make it more of a deliverable that the consultant is leading, is to change the wording from assist with the design and implementation of focus groups, et cetera, to something like facilitate or lead the design and implementation, so that it's very clear that that is one of their deliverables, not that they will be assisting others with it. They will be doing it in conjunction and in collaboration with the groups that are named.
That sounds good.
Brenda?
No, I was just mentioning that, Donna, that sounds good.
Sarah?
Let's see if I remember what I was going to say. So what would be the end product? Help determine the goals of what Albany Public Library should be doing. And then it would be up to the staff to come up with the objectives and the activities to meet those overarching goals.
Typically, and Melanie, correct me, typically the strategic plan consultant delivers the overarching goals and objectives with working with the library, and the staff then gets together and comes up with the tactics.
So that's how we have done it in the past, is that we actually, the consultant generally works with the board and all of the facilitating of the groups to come up with those goals, and then works along then with staff to help develop the tactics. So it's not just, they do actually help with the tactic building as well.
So the front end is very community based. And then once that's all determined, it becomes more our work and the staff's work.
Correct.
I like that. I like that very much. Thank you.
By doing it that way, you end up with a more fluid plan, because it's not so disconnected with one set of goals and then another. You have somebody facilitating that communication and that transition from the community goals into the staff tactics.
So this version of the RFP was put forward by the committee. So we either need a second on this, or if somebody would like to make an amendment as discussed, we could also accept that motion as well. Donna?
Yes, if there's general agreement that just tweaking that third bullet point to say lead the design and implementation of focus groups, I would move to accept this RFP with that one change, with the stipulation of that one change being made.
I'll second.
And can we say community focus groups
So lead the design and implementation of community focus groups.
Yes.
Can I amend my motion? Do I have to amend my motion to include that language?
No, I think we got it.
I think
Okay,
we have
all right.
it.
And then Brenda, you seconded?
Yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this new motion?
Sorry, can, because I was trying to type it at the same time. The ad hoc strategic plan committee made a motion to approve the strategic plan RFP. And then I wrote, with the edit on the third bullet point, page 2, change assist to facilitate. What was it, community?
No, it was
Sorry.
lead the design and implementation of community focus groups. So take out assist with and change it to lead.
Yep, lead the design and implementation of community focus.
Community focus groups.
Got it.
And it's no longer a motion by the committee. This motion is by Donna and seconded by Brenda. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, we can go to board docs and vote.
Trustee Ray, would you please state your vote?
Yes.
Thank
Hi, I think that I'm having a board docs issue because I joined late. It just said my vote was not recorded.
Okay, I can take note of that. How do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Becky.
So the motion carries, and that's a 9 in the affirmative vote.
Made a note on my minutes.
Thank you. Our next item under new business is the board clerk job description. As we all know, and we will spend some time on this at the end of the meeting, recognizing Rebecca. Unfortunately, or fortunately, she's, moving on in her career. It's a happy time, but it's sad for us at APL that she's leaving us. So we have discussed going forward, filling the board clerk job description. Currently, the board clerk position is combined with an administrative assistant position for the executive director. So what we've done is the executive committee has come up with a description for just a part-time board clerk position. And we approved this at the executive committee meeting last week. And prior to that meeting, I believe I did send this out to the entire board. We have not made any changes to this description. The executive committee recommended approval, so we made the motion. So we're just looking for a second from the board and hopefully approval, but I can take any questions that anybody has on this job description. And the next item under new business I put was board clerk next steps. So this is really just the job description, and then we can discuss moving forward in filling this position. Sarah?
I second.
Oh, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion before we go to a vote? Seeing none, we can go to board docs and vote.
That was Dallas who seconded, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And Trustee Way, once again, please state your vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Jenna Patera, your vote went through this time. Very good.
And the motion carries. Thank you. So the next item under new business is board clerk next steps. So we did discuss as a board allowing the executive committee to handle the steps of hiring for the board clerk position. Obviously, the full board gets the final vote, but the committee will be moving the process along. So I just wrote down the discussion I feel like we've had so far. I'm a visual person, so I just wanted to get it in writing. And that's in board docs. If you click on board clerk next steps, it's not a document, it's just in board docs. A potential timeline I came up with, because I know some people have asked, you know, a timeline we're thinking of. Our next full board meeting is Tuesday, April 12th. So one potential timeline for filling this position would be if the executive committee can meet sometime in this next week and post the job description by the end of next week, allow 2 weeks for the posting to stay up. That would be from Friday, March 18th to Friday, April 1st. Then we would actually have the first week in April to interview candidates in order to bring our committee's recommendation to the full board for a vote at the April meeting. If we don't think that's enough time, then we would probably be looking for that final board approval in May if we wanted to keep the posting up longer. So I just wanted to give everyone an idea of what that timeline looks like with the executive committee carrying out this process as discussed. Does anybody have any questions on that?
So Sarah, the executive committee will prepare a job posting like we did for treasurer, right?
Yes. I figure that that's the next step. In this next week, or again, if it has to be after, we would meet to draft a hiring notice and discuss where the job opening should be posted. And then we would also set the deadline to apply and post the job opening. And I was hoping that we could get those two tasks accomplished during the month of March. And like I said, whether we keep it posted for longer and whether we interview candidates before or after the April meeting, I still can see it happening in April at some point. Question for Bob, though. I thought of this as I was drafting these next steps over the weekend. In terms of a rate of pay, I just don't remember what we did for the treasurer position since this is a board position. We didn't put rate of pay, obviously, in our job description we created. It would either go in the posting or we would discuss it when we're hiring someone. That needs full board approval, or at what part of the process?
At the time of appointment.
At the time
certainly
of
the board could give you guidance now, but at the time of appointment, the rate of pay would need to be set.
Okay. So that could be a discussion with the board at the same time we bring the candidates forward to the board for full review.
Yeah, as long as the board's comfortable with that, yes.
Okay. If nobody has any further questions on this, the executive committee will discuss our next meeting, and we can get the ball rolling on that, and we will keep the entire board informed of our process via email. I'll make sure those go out. Our next item under new business, our next two items are policies. Well, sorry, the next item is the art reconsideration form. So if somebody would like to take us through this form.
Melanie, would you feel comfortable going through it because you developed the form?
Sure. So essentially, this form mirrors our request for material reconsideration form. It was the board or the Policy and Governance Committee felt that there was a need specifically for art that is being displayed in the library as well. So we did, it's essentially the same form, just modified slightly for the art. So we have like where the art piece is located, the title, artist, and description of it. You know, the action you would like taken, either remove it from the public viewing or another. Have you personally viewed the work? What do you believe is the purpose of the material, and your reasonings? So the one thing that we did take off and will be discussed later on when we do our request for reconsideration form was there was a line of if you are a part of an organization. We did remove it from this form, and we do plan on removing it from the request for material reconsideration form in the future when we look at that policy.
Why are you removing that line?
We felt that it could be considered, if I'm using the correct word, Bob, discriminatory, that it would be associated, like just because somebody's with a group, are they given lenience one way or the other way for that decision? That shouldn't make a difference if they're part of a group or an individual. It shouldn't weigh heavier just because they're part of a group.
It's ultimately that you're a governmental actor dealing with freedom of association issue.
And was there any specific incident or something that prompted us to make a separate form for art?
No. It just was a recommendation by the members of the committee, if you'd like to speak to that.
I think it's important. There's more and more challenges happening throughout the country. At one time it was programs, and now it's materials and things on databases like EBSCO or Novel. And because there's art hanging in the library, we just felt exhibit space, art space, everything should have a form in case somebody wishes to ask that it be reconsidered. Doesn't mean that it's coming down, but it's an avenue where people can express.
Thank you.
So the committee has recommended adoption of the form. If anyone else on the board would like to second this. Donna, is that your electronic question or second?
I will second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we can go to board docs and vote.
Arlene Way, please state your vote.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the motion carries. I was just refreshing my board doc screen, but I believe the next item under new business is the hazardous materials policy.
Thank you. This was a policy that hadn't been reviewed in a while, and we felt it really needed legal eyes to take a look at it because things have changed. Some of the staffing in the library, as well as new OSHA guidelines. And I don't know what 19 CFR is, Bob. Can you talk about the need to update this a little bit?
The original policy came into effect when the OSHA regs were updated to include the right to know information, which was, I think, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And this, your prior policy had basically been a policy that you purchased from a service. It wasn't totally tailored to the library. And so when your current facilities manager went through it, he did the work of actually tailoring it to you and to your operations. And then we went through to just make sure that the regulatory sites that he had listed were accurate. So the references to 29 CFR 1910 1200G are the right to know regulations promulgated by the office, by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And so this is basically a policy that allows employees and members of the public to know what materials are in use at the library and what the various properties of those materials are.
Thank you, Bob. So the committee is asking the board to approve the revised policy.
And there's already a motion on the floor by the committee. So if anybody would like to second the motion.
Yes.
Arlene seconds, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we can go to board docs and vote.
And I vote yes.
Arlene.
And the motion carries. Thank you.
And thank you all who are involved to make these policies stronger.
And
Next.
that one specifically much more easy to read.
Sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the next item on the agenda is the tax cap override. I'm assuming we do this before we do the budget discussion.
Yes,
Okay.
that was by advice of counsel. So one
Okay.
has to happen before the other.
Bob, would you like to give your annual spiel on the tax cap override?
Sure. This is perhaps a little more important spiel this year, only because you guys are potentially going to propose a tax levy increase. Under the tax cap levy, tax cap law, excuse me, which has been in place for 10 plus years at this point. The only way a local government, of which the library is one, can go higher than the calculated tax cap limit is by passing a motion to override the tax cap levy limit by 60% of its voting members. Right now, as I understand it, there are 2 or 3 different options on the table, none of which would actually override your levy as calculated by the library staff. But what we advise libraries to do is to pass an override resolution in any event, just in case something about that calculation was incorrect or some data point that is being inserted into that calculation is incorrect. The reason for that is that if you don't have the override in place and you pass a levy that turns out to be higher than the limited amount, the amount that you collect in excess of that has to be retained and then sent back to the taxpayers, which is just a process that we certainly don't want to have you go through unnecessarily. More importantly, it could be money that you're counting on in your budget that you would have to refund to the taxpayers in the following year if you don't have the override in place. So again, I don't believe there's any intention to pass a levy increase that's higher than the limit this year, but this is basically a circuit breaker to make sure that if you end up having an error, it doesn't cost the library.
Sarah, your hand is up.
Thank you. So it's like having an insurance policy that you hope you never have to use, but it protects the library budget should the unexpected happen. Is that correct, Bob?
I've never heard that analogy, but okay.
In other words, it's not going to cost us anything to pass it, but should something happen, and it does, it would cost the library money. It's been a long day, Bob. I hope I'm being clear, sort of.
I'll chime in and play devil's advocate on this. I usually do. While I understand what Bob is saying and I appreciate it, you know, if we do vote to override our tax cap, you know, that's always a headline. Somebody could say Albany Public Library votes to override their tax cap, and it would be factually accurate. So I'm a little leery of that. I think it's confusing to voters if we override it, but we're not sending a budget out that actually overrides it. But I understand, you know, I understand Bob's position as well.
And just to note, we have done this in the past when we have gone for a tax levy increase, and we usually address that specific statement with our community reports that we do. You know, we're not going, it was just, and I think we actually almost use it in the past as how Sarah has mentioned it, that it's just an insurance policy to be there in case something happened with a calculation or we received an incorrect data point, but it's just a formality.
Donna?
Yeah, just because I went through this with this board, I was involved with this issue with this board 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now. Yeah, this is something that is just sort of done pro forma every year. It does not indicate an intention on the part of the board to override the tax cap. It's simply a document that needs to be in place, as Bob said, in case one of the calculations proves to be incorrect. It saves a lot of work on the back end, but I think the library and the board have typically done an excellent job in communicating why this document is needed and what the reality is in terms of its impact on the tax levy.
If there's no more comment for now, I would take a motion, and this motion is actually a resolution. So the language, Bob, would be motion to adopt a resolution.
Correct, and the resolution is on board docs.
Donna, I see your hand.
Yes, I move to adopt the resolution to override the tax cap.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
I think I heard Arlene. I can't see everyone, so I heard Tom also, so I see Tom is already in board docs. We can go to board docs and vote.
Yes. I'll vote yes.
I don't have anything popping up.
Please state your vote.
I didn't have anything pop up. I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't know why it didn't pop up, but I recorded it.
Motion carries. Thank you. Did we lose someone? Is everyone still here? I'm counting 8 votes.
Because there's one no. Oh, let's see. Oh yeah, 8 votes.
No, because Jenna's here, so we have 9.
Wonder why it took her out. Jenna, would you like to state your vote?
I did vote in board docs, but I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, your name isn't on my list. But I just checked the roll call and it's correct, so we'll fix it.
Motion carries. And the next item is, and this is in the correct order, approving the budget, and then we can do a tax levy approval resolution after that, once we discuss and decide on the budget.
Correct. Once you decide on the budget, that will drive the number that you need to put forward for the tax levy.
Perfect, thank you. Would the Finance Committee like to kick off this discussion? And point of clarification, do we already have a motion on the table for the 2.5% increase from the committee? Yes, okay. So we do have a motion on the table, looking for a second, but floor is open for discussion.
Yeah, so just to set the table, the document attached to the agenda item does include 3 columns with 3 different budgets, as we discussed at the special budget meeting. Those were some of our options. The document attached here are the 3 options that we primarily considered at our last committee meeting. And at the committee meeting, we talked at length about what we heard from all of you at the full board meeting, and we did our best to make a recommendation that reflected the full board's preferences with this year's budget. And you know, I'll just say that we didn't make this decision lightly, and whenever we ask for a tax increase, it does put the onus on us to make sure that the community understands why we're doing this, and to make sure that we have a good reason for doing it. And we think we do, for reasons that we'll elaborate on in this conversation. But to start, I wanted to say that, should I say more, or do Melanie and Adam want to talk about it? Because I can elaborate, if that makes sense.
Yes, go ahead and elaborate.
All right.
Already talking, so go ahead.
So we settled on the 2.5% increase, which is the middle column on this document. At the committee meeting, we talked about how we're trying to strike a balance between how much fund balance we want to use this year and in future years, compared to how much we want to spend on salaries and spend on other budget lines that we know we're going to want to use. So as we talked about at the special budget meeting, salaries are one of our largest expenses, and one that we expect to increase likely in the next year. We have a union contract that is coming to an end this summer, and we're going to have a new union contract probably in the first quarter or so of the next fiscal year that this budget will impact. So the salary numbers that that are in the document we're looking at now try to account for, one, the new union contract, whatever that may be, but we just want to make sure that we don't put ourselves, we want to make sure that we don't put ourselves in the position of negotiating a contract that we didn't budget for. That wouldn't be good fiscal management. And we also understand that we want to fill a lot of positions in the next year. It's been a struggle, and we're working with civil service to hopefully make that struggle be less over the next year. And we're hearing a commitment from management to, fill those vacancies and get us fully staffed. The the North Albany branch will be open during the next fiscal year, and that will require a couple more staff per day. So we will have more staff working at any given time, and that will lead to higher expense. So those are two of the main reasons that we settled where we did. This budget does also contemplate using some fund balance. And of course, the more fund balance we use, the less we have for future years. And we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we use too much fund balance and then we box ourselves into a corner for future budgets where we would have really little flexibility about what we could do. And that might force us to do future tax increases rather than planning over the course of a couple of years. So those are the main reasons. I welcome your questions.
So if I may speak a little bit to the staffing concerns, because I believe that's where primarily we focused our energy on with this budget, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to, currently, as I've stated in previous meetings, we are at a situation right now where we are operating 6 branches, not 7 at the current standing. And between the hiring freeze that we had during the pandemic, with a lot of attrition because of the Great Resignation, and the slowdown of hiring with civil service, we currently have 12 positions open. And we're still seeing a potential to go over our part-time salary. And I express that because we are in a situation where I have individuals who go out on leave for different reasons, family medical leave, maternity leave, paternity leave, or other situations that are out of their control. And when we are at a situation where I can't absorb those losses, those long-term losses, with the staffing that we have to hire positions. We have to hire part-time positions, temporary positions to fulfill those hours. So we're essentially paying extra individuals to fulfill the slots in our schedule that we need filling. So right now, knowing that we're going to be opening the 7th branch again, and there will be an additional need for one more person, another full-time person at that staff, because as you remember, we are opening that branch with a new facility space for programming. So there will be additional programming that will be happening at that location that hasn't happened in the past. And when somebody's programming, you need somebody to work the desk. And that has always been our historically understaffed location. It has generally worked with 2 full-time staff members and 2 part-time staff members. So to keep that branch open, there will be an additional staff member needed. But right now, we're at the situation, even with that branch being closed and those staff members being shifted around to other branches to help fill these spots, we have enough staff to staff the branches and to do a little bit of programming. That's okay now. With us having reduced programming, we're doing about half as much programming as we used to do pre-pandemic, but we're hoping to get out of the pandemic and start resuming programming back at our pre-pandemic rate, which was, we were doing about 5,300 programs a year across the district, and we are only doing about 2,500 right now. So in order to have the staff available to do that, we do have to consider aligning staff and potentially hiring more people. We've talked about it, and there's a potential for an additional 6 part-time people, staff members, to help shift so we do have that availability for extra programming as we move forward in the future. So it's difficult. This budget as it stands, as we're presenting the 2.5%, pretty much, as I keep mentioning, staunches the bleed. It gets us to a point where we're not so stressed, but it still doesn't put us where we potentially need to be in the future. But we feel that this 2.5% increase lays that foundation so we can have the potential to move forward in future years as well to create those positions so we're not so stretched with our staffing. So I do want to lay that groundwork first, that this is the going for no increase at all will mean a reduction in services in some manner, whether it's a cut in hours to help shift staffing around so we can provide the programming if we want to increase those services, and not just have bodies at a desk, but actually be doing some more community building. We were really in a positive direction pre-pandemic, that we were moving away from a transactional relationship with our community. So it wasn't just handing books over a desk, but more of a relational of being able to do more small business assistance, job hunting assistance, programming, different programming initiatives. So we'd like to get back to that, but with the current staffing we have, we just can't do that at our current funding. So with a 0%, if we weren't to go for a tax levy increase, knowing that we're going to have to increase salaries over the next couple of years, just with the current state of the economy right now. We haven't gone for a budget increase in 4 years, and cost of living has gone up. So the money has to come from someplace. So the 2.5% increase gets us to a point where we're not bleeding with the staffing, and we're at a point where we can then build forward for the future.
Do any trustees have questions or would like to share comments or how you're leaning, your thoughts on the 2.5%? Sarah, Dallas?
Thank you. Tom, you said that your committee, and thank you for all of the work. This is not easy work. It has lots of ripples in so many ways. Given the increase in energy, given the increase in the cost of living, why did you go for the 2.5 rather than the 2.75?
Because we're trying to balance, we realize we're asking people to pay more in taxes. So we're trying to strike a balance between asking for too much and asking for enough that will keep our library in a good fiscal condition for the foreseeable future. If you look at the fund balance line, Sarah, you'll notice that the additional amount of money that we would raise by doing 2.75 is not that much more in the grand scheme of things than over the 2.5. So we thought we could sacrifice that amount of fund balance in order to keep the levy a little lower.
Thank you.
Donna?
Yeah, if I could just add to that, to what Tom said, in terms of the choice of 2%, 2.5 and 2.75, we mentioned this at our last committee meeting. We have one chance a year to ask for a tax levy, a change to the tax levy. And at least it was my feeling that it's a palatable number. What we don't want to do is go out for something that, sounds, could be perceived as a large increase and have it be voted down. And we've lost our chance for the year not that we couldn't go back for a special budget vote, but that's an expensive and time-consuming proposition to do. We've done it before, and it's a real time and money drain. So, you know, with the 2.5% increase, if you look at the last page of the document, that is an increase over what is currently being paid on a home of $150,000 assessed value is of just under $6 a year. And that's a number that I think we can go out with.
Any other discussion or questions or?
Sarah?
Yes, sorry, I'm just scrolling through the screens trying to see everyone. I'm sorry, who was that?
That was me. One of the things we talked about, or I'm hearing in regards to this budget, is staffing, and I hear a lot about staffing. And I do know some of the issues with civil service because we talk about that a lot. But it is some things or something that I would like to see going forward. And I want to thank everyone for their comments. But going forward, when we speak about staffing and the impact of short staffing, which has been chronic, at least on my time serving this board, is some of the same conversations that have been going on for a long time. And of course, we do support staffing. No, we don't want to cut services at all. But I would like to see some things on the management end, such as some recruitment strategies. We mentioned a lot about salaries, and if salaries are determined by someone else, whether it's civil service or whomever, then I think we need to address that more. I would like to see, as I mentioned, some recruitment strategies, because we keep saying, or I keep hearing a lot about difficulty in hiring. And of course, we always going to have attrition. But some of this conversation need to be centered around what are we actually doing about it. I do know that you guys had a great meeting with civil service, which is a big, big issue. But if we are requesting tax increases, what is within our control that we can do? So I would like to see some of that planning. What is in control, or that this library, the staff, Melanie, whomever, have control over? And I think recruitment, not just asking for a tax increase, but what else can be done to make sure that this job is more attractive, and also to keep the folks that you have. Recruitment and retention is very important, and I would like to hear more about that going forward. Also, years ago in the Personnel Committee, I had requested an organizational chart, and Scott thought that that was great, and it started for a while, and then that went away. I would like to see that organizational chart brought back, which shows the staffing, the vacancies. I think that was very helpful for the board to be aware of the vacancies and have a visual to really see what the needs are. And I know it works for other organizations as well to share the org chart, the vacancies. And as we discussed, services, as we discuss new things being brought to the table, as we discuss tax increase requests, then we've all been fully aware going along that, hey, we looked at this org chart, we know that this is happening, these are our needs. If we need 5 more positions, this is why we need it. If this particular position has been vacant for X amount of time, then we have the opportunity to say, okay, well, what are we doing about it? What are the barriers and what are our strategies and where can we go from here? So I would like to see that org chart brought back and see some recruitment strategies besides civil service, because I know civil service is at it, but I want to know what we can do, what can be done on our end. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Jenna, I see your hand.
I'd like Trustee Robinson, Dr. Robinson, to clarify a little, because she said that we need to address our recruitment more. But I don't, as someone who's been at the civil service meetings and
Right.
been working on this for several years, I just don't understand how.
And I've been right. And when I say address recruitment more, just like I said, to see what we can do on our end in regards to recruitment. And I did identify the civil service. It is a issue. We all know that civil service is an issue, and you guys just had a great meeting with the civil service. If civil service remains an issue and you ask for a tax increase and you mentioned that it's about staffing, then what else can we do, or is there anything that we can do around that? So that is why I would like to see a recruitment strategies, or see what we can and can't do on our end to make these jobs more attractive. So
Wondering if you have some solid ideas for it, because I know that it's something that we've been struggling with for years now at this point with civil service, and I love the ideas of doing more recruitment and kind of having more of an approach, but if it's in regards, it seems sort of not exactly the same conversation as the budgetary conversation, but also B, you said, I want to address this more. I'm wondering, do you have
yeah. First of all, Jenna, if I had the answer for staffing, we would have the staffing already there. So my comments wasn't mentioned as though I have the answers for staffing, but to come up with strategies, that's something that maybe we can do on our end. So again, I do understand civil service. I also understand that we're asking for a tax increase. So going forward, if we can, one of the things that I suggested was the org chart. I suggested it initially, so we could bring that back. That is one of my suggestions that we can do. So everyone can understand the staffing issues. You can see it visually right in front of you, like, hey, we have this attrition, we have this, or we're having this new service, yet this is the only staff we have. We need X amount of folks. So that is one of the strategies that we could certainly bring back. So me making my comments is not that, okay, well, I have the answers to staffing because we would already have the staff in here, but we can do some changes, maybe putting heads together, whatever. I specifically don't work in the library, so it could be some changes that could be made to make it more attractive. I don't work in the library. I'm on the board. I'm a trustee, so I don't work there. But I certainly support the staff that is there.
Can I address a couple of comments Brenda made?
I still see Jenna's hand, so I'm just going to make sure. Jenna, do you have any further comments?
No, nope.
Thank you, Jenna. Melanie and then Rebecca.
Okay. So I just want to mention for the org chart, we do have the org chart posted on board docs. So that is always on board docs. And our vacancies, we list the number of vacancies in every executive director report. So that was included in the report this time around. If you want it in a different format, I'm hearing that it's the formatting that you want differently. So I can address that now that I know that is a concern of yours. As to some of the things for recruitment and making the position more desirable, I know we're working with trying to address different organizations that we could promote the positions to. And we've already started doing recruitment on how to be a library clerk and making sure that we do programming based on that, because a lot of people don't realize that how to go through the civil service process. So we have reached out and done some of that. You mentioned, I want to bring up that you mentioned salaries, and salaries are a part of this budget, and you guys do approve the contract. So salaries, you guys do have a say in that as well. But if we were to increase salaries, it would impact the budget by either a further increase or a shifting of funds. And what, as I keep reminding everybody, I am open to any and all ideas. But if we have a set budget, if we are to increase a line someplace in one location, it means a decrease in others. So what are you willing to give up in order to increase one of the budget lines if we do have a set budget, whatever it is? Because we know we aren't a private or organization that, you know, can rely on profits and see a profit increase and then we can trickle that down. We have a set budget that's provided by our community. So what services, you know, so we can do all of what you're asking with your help. And with the org chart and with the vacancies, I can obviously, if you need, I will try to find a good way to do that. Our org chart is very wide and broad. And if I were to give you that visually with the vacancies, it can actually, it would, yeah, as Rebecca says, it would be very, very tiny. So let me work on a different way of presenting that to you. But I could easily do that.
I'm just going to jump in right before you, Rebecca. Thank you, Melanie, for the response. And I think it's good just to hear sometimes, I know you do your report, but just mention some of those strategies, because it's not that whether you're doing them or not doing them or whatever, even mentioning it, I think it's a help for folks who are thinking about or making a decision for a tax increase or not. So thank you for that, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Melanie, you're all set? Okay, Rebecca?
Thank you. I just want to get into a little bit more detail about some of the things Melanie mentioned and in response to Dr. Robinson's questions about recruitment. Right now, the position in the public at the public service desk with most turnover is part-time clerks. And in a way, we're recruiting people to take a test to then potentially be on a list to get an interview. So it is very complicated. And as Melanie mentioned, we have done programming. Our librarians have done programming around how to be a library clerk, how to deal with civil service, how to take the test, and things like that, how to prepare for interviews and everything. So that's been done. Also just at our desk every day, if we have regular patrons who come in who we think would be wonderful employees, we do talk to them and work with them and encourage them to apply and kind of, you know, guide them through the process as much as we can. Melanie mentioned some temp employees we have. We very often have people who are at clerk positions who are current or temps who are currently in library school. We encourage them to take the exam for library assistant and librarian as soon as they possibly can. So they're on that list and are available to come and work with us. So I just wanted to mention a couple of those that are already ongoing. So, and that is, you know, it's on the staff level. So I just wanted to let you know about those.
I just have a quick follow-up question on that, and then I do see Jare's hand. My follow-up question on the vacancies, Melanie, I pulled up your ED report and I see 12 vacancies. Are part-time board clerks multiple of those 12 vacancies? Do you know about how many are just the part-time board clerks in those 12 vacancies?
Part-time library clerks or board clerks?
I'm sorry, part-time library clerks.
Wanted to make sure. I believe three of those positions are part-time library clerks. We have 2 L1 part-time L1s 5. I know we have 2 custodial positions currently open. That's 7. We have the part-time HR specialist, the ED, and I don't have my other list right in front of me, so I
It's
can't
okay.
remember off the top of my head what the other
Curious,
ones.
just curious ballpark. Thank you. Jarre?
Thank you, Dr. Robinson, for your comments. And I think I'm just going to, I'll reserve my comments. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So right now we do have a motion from the Audit and Finance Committee for a for the budget with a 2.5% levy increase. I see Jenna's hand.
I just also want to remind everyone that the staff has not come to us in this way saying that they need an increase in order to continue operations at the current level in my time on the board. And that's almost 5 years. And so I want to say that I take that seriously and that I trust our administrative staff's decision and voice here. And I want that to be in consideration as we take our vote.
Thank you, Jenna. And with that, if nobody has any further comments, I'm looking for a second on the motion. I see Sarah Dallas.
Sorry, Sarah Dallas seconds.
Any further discussion? Then we can go to board docs and vote.
Yes.
I've lost my board docs. I vote yes.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Unanimous.
Thank you. Very much appreciate this. Will give us all a nice, deep, relaxing breath now. Thank you. Thank you. This is I just want to let everybody know we know how difficult a decision this is, and if it helps you any, our staff has been occupied with this, going over the numbers and figuring out a way to make it work. And while we don't like to see, many of our staff members are residents as well and don't want to see their own taxes raised. But we just understand that it was necessary this year. So thank you very much for understanding with us.
Hey, Sarah, I know it was your motion and I should have noticed this before it was done. So the Audit and Finance Committee had made a recommendation as to a budget, and that included a 2.5% tax levy increase. For the minutes, we just may want to tighten that motion language up. You just adopted a budget with the 2.5% tax levy increase embedded in it.
Yep, and actually not my motion. That's just the president's the stand-in when a committee puts forward a motion.
Yeah.
But I agree that this is a budget, not a tax levy vote.
Yeah. So when we do the minutes, we should just tinker with that a little bit, because the next vote that you're going to have in front of you is to actually approve the levy.
Can you see the rewording? Should I just take out the tax levy altogether, or is it okay how it is now?
Motion to approve the budget with.
I don't know actually if it translated on the when I see it.
It did show, and that's a lot closer, so we can catch it in minutes.
Beautiful.
Then Jenna, your hand is still up. I'm not sure.
I just am bad at putting it down, but I apologize, but I do have to leave. It is my bedtime night and promises were made.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jenna, for popping in.
Thank you.
And I believe Sarah Dallas, you're also heading out. Okay, thank you.
Do we need the vote for the?
Do
tax
we
levy?
need to have those people here for the tax levy vote?
I
Yeah,
mean, your next vote is the other one. I would try and have them here if you could.
well, we already lost Jenna, so
Sarah Dallas, can you stay for a second?
thank you.
So I believe the committee didn't make this motion. I believe we're motioning to adopt a resolution increasing the tax levy by 2.5%, and we need a motion and a second. Is that correct?
That is correct, and you need to insert the number from the budget that you just passed, which
For the exact operating tax levy.
correct, which I believe Vice President McCarthy can confirm, but I believe that's going to be 7372420.
That is correct. So I will make a motion to adopt the resolution as proposed in this agenda item, inserting $7,372,420 into the motion.
Repeat slowly. To adopt as proposed. No, adopt the resolution. Okay.
Yeah, adopting the resolution and inserting 7372420 as our tax levy amount.
Thank you.
And Sarah, I saw your hand. Would you like to second? Sarah Dallas seconds. Any further discussion on this motion to adopt the resolution? I have to scroll. I can't see everyone. Okay, seeing none, we can go to board docs to vote.
Yes.
Dorleen,
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is another resolution, call for election of trustees and tax levy vote. And I think that's about as straightforward as that, just a resolution calling for the election and the vote. Would somebody like to make the motion to adopt this resolution?
I make the motion.
Was that you, Brenda?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Was that Donna?
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Bob, I see you speaking, but you're muted.
Yeah, just to be clear, there are 3 vacancies for full 5-year terms created by the expiration of the terms of Trustee Shearer, Trustee Robinson, and Trustee Patera. And there is a partial vacancy for a 4-year remaining term created by the resignation in midterm of Trustee Finn.
Thank you. We can go to board docs to vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have candidate petition and instructions. Do these need adoption?
Not technically. They're just forms of the library. I always bring them forward so that everybody understands and hears the operative dates. So as per the resolution that you just passed, we will be asking the City School District of Albany to hold the vote with their annual budget and board election on May 17th, 2022. There is a form nominating petition that is included in your materials that references your 4 vacancies and for up to a 5-year term. And then also in your materials is a set of instructions, which all of you have seen before, that tell potential candidates what the process is, how they need to submit things. This year, because last year's school board election had 2,262 votes cast in it, persons looking to get on the ballot for your trustee seats will need to collect 46 valid signatures, which is 2% of the number of votes cast in the last library election. Those instructions don't change much year to year, but they are customized each year to just talk about the number of vacancies, the deadlines, and what have you. This year, the petition deadline will be Wednesday, April 27th, 2022.
Thank you, Bob. And I was just keeping Sarah Dallas a little longer because, and if we could just refresh the screen here, we do have an 8.11. That is ratification of executive committee action. When the executive committee voted to lift the mask mandate last week, which needs board ratification. So I just wanted to make sure we had, yes, I see Sarah Dallas. I know we have a quorum. I just wanted to make sure there was no special number or anything needed to ratify action of the executive committee.
Oh, simple majority of the board.
Okay, great. Good night, Sarah. All right. This we need a motion for and a second. By 2 individuals not on the executive committee. Donna, I see your hand. Motion. Thank you.
I move to ratify the executive committee action that was taken.
Thank you. And a second from someone not on the executive committee.
Second.
Thank you, Arlene. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we can go to board docs to vote.
Yes. Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have the pandemic operations plan update. Melanie?
Sure. So with the CDC and governor's recommended guidelines, we did feel the need to update the pandemic operation plan. And we tried this time to include language. Well, the very end, the biggest point is the very end where we have the chart. It used to be the 4-level chart, low, moderate, substantial, high, and now it's just low, medium, and high in accordance with the new guidelines. But throughout the document, and you can see we tried to highlight it in pink, I think is the color. It's like a light red or pink that we chose. We tried to include language that aligns it more because it is a pandemic operation plan. It wasn't a COVID operation plan. And the intent was that this document could be used in future situations. So we tried to align the language to show that we're being responsive to what the CDC is recommending for communicable infections, and knowing that these are the paths that we've seen that have been taken in the past, but this is, if they have recommendations in the future going forward, that we can follow those as well. So we have things, some of the things we did because they were COVID specific, we aligned with the current guidelines, such as exposure rates, quarantine rates, what happens if somebody tests positive, if they're vaccinated. But we did include, such as on page 11, B1, it says employees and contractors who test positive for a communicable disease that is subject to public health emergencies or exhibit symptoms, regardless of their vaccination status, should stay home for at least 5 days and may leave isolation after being fever-free for 24 hours. And And then we continue on, and then at the end, we included or adhere to the most current recommendations of the CDC for the specified communicable disease. So we gave ourselves a little bit of so we don't have to every time the CDC makes a new recommendation, it would be covered under this. But like I said, the biggest changes come towards the end with our continuation of services plan and how it's impacting services as we go forward. We are in the medium range at the moment, according to the CDC guidelines. So it would allow us to do indoor programs with limitations, which we are planning on hoping to implement. We're starting in April if this plan is approved. And then meeting room usage, which we are also planning on starting up in April as well, if this plan is approved. The reason we're saying April is because we had to, unfortunately, our programming is done months in advance. We try to do a lot of pre-work to make sure that our publicity is out for the programming. So a lot of our April programming had already been done and implemented or promoted before this went into consideration with the new guidelines. And then for meeting rooms, we are still using some of the meeting rooms for social distancing purposes with staff. So we need the time to put those spots in the library back as public spaces, and then the internal back end work to get those rooms back ready to be booked by the public. And because we've also done some shifting of the spaces themselves and of staff, we have to do some retraining and reworking of the computer system. So we just have to make sure we have a little time to get that implemented. So that's why we're thinking of an April 4th start date for both indoor programming with limitations and meeting room use. Oh, and somebody did point out to me that masks are now, we did include masking as part of the pandemic operation plan, which it wasn't before. So now we have it tied to those to those 3 levels. So masking is going to be required if we ever hit the high range again of communicable diseases, but in low and moderate, they're optional.
Thank you, Melanie. So we need a motion and a second to approve the updates to the POC.
I make a motion to approve.
I accept. I second.
I have a question before we vote. So on the page where the 3 tiers are broken down, you say indoor programs are limited service during the medium period. What does limited actually mean? Like, what does that look like?
So it will mean different things at different times. What we're planning on starting off with is reducing the number of individuals. So sometimes for some of our programs, we would have up to 30 people attend the program. We might reduce that down to 20, just to give us a little bit more space in the location. And we're also starting off with adult programming first, because the adults are the ones that are can be vaccinated. We're going to slowly inch our way into the under 5-year-old programming for indoor until we see some of the numbers improve a little bit more. So that's what we mean by limited. We're gonna slowly ease into or out of, depending on, if we get down to low and have to move back into medium, that's how we're going to consider is what the current situation is, what the vulnerable populations are, and make our adjustments based on that.
Okay. And what does like indoor and outdoor outreach, what is outreach as opposed to programs?
So outreach is when we've been invited to something like the Kids Expo. We consider that outreach is not one of our programs. It's something we've been invited to. And we have been treating those slightly differently because depending on the situation of the program, if it's just tabling, we might be doing, but if it's more interaction with the individuals, patrons or community members, we've made the decisions based on, once again, the limitation, what the current vulnerable populations are and what the rates are at the moment. So we hadn't been doing outreach specifically for that reason, because it was in an environment that we couldn't make sure that we had control over and it had safety. But in the medium phase, we're willing to do a little bit more outreach into the community. And we do, obviously, if it's outdoor, we'll give more of a yes to that than indoor. But if the individual outreach organization can show that they're taking into consideration proper protocols, or at least make those considerations, then we'll be more apt to do that.
Okay, thank you.
And any other, Donna?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment and compliment Melanie and the staff and all of the heads of branches on revising this plan. It's super easy to follow. What you've outlined, Melanie, makes so much sense in terms of doing a gradual reintroduction. And it's very fortunate that you plan programming in advance. I think that this is going to play really, really well and, bring people back, allow them to choose things to come back to. And it makes a ton of sense. It's great.
And I think that's the biggest key right there, is giving the public options, so not having one or the other. Because as it's been actually quite the discussion in the directors organization with all of Upper Hudson. We've done these virtual programs and it was like, oh, we did all these virtual programs just so we could have programming. And they're like, but we've seen a huge response from the public about how beneficial the virtual programs are. So it's not something that we're going to eliminate completely. So now everybody's scrambling about like, okay, well, it was all this way or all that way. And now we had to find a nice hybrid middle ground. But because of the response from the public, I think they like those choices.
Yeah, I think, there's all kinds of reasons why people don't come to in-person programming that have nothing to do with COVID. So
correct.
It's a nice side effect.
I like the term, I heard it early on in the pandemic, that don't waste a crisis. And I think this was one of those things that we didn't waste. We were able to be very innovative and found ways that we could provide services that benefited the community past the pandemic. So we're very fortunate.
That term is usually in a much more cynical way, usually. You guys actually used it in a positive way.
Positive thinking.
Any other questions or comments before we vote? All right, let's go to board docs and vote.
I vote yes.
And the motion carries. Thank you. Second public comment.
We have not received any public comment.
Thank you. We do not need to go into an executive session tonight. So before we adjourn, just two housekeeping items. First, I would like to recognize Rebecca Delgaizo. This is her last board meeting with us. Like I said, happy for her to go on to the next step in her career, but sad for us that we're losing her. She's just been such a tremendous asset to the board and APL as a whole, doing the real tough work of just getting everybody coordinated. And it's a lot. There's a lot that goes into the back end that not everyone necessarily sees. So I just wanted to recognize Rebecca.
Aw.
Best of luck, Rebecca. You will be so missed.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Thank you. I'm gonna miss the library.
You can come visit anytime.
I love everybody. Like probably one of my favorite jobs I've ever had is working at the library. The people, but also the opportunity to become more connected to the community. Even though I don't live in Albany, I feel way more connected to Albany than even where I do live. And just it's been phenomenal. A lot of growth. A lot of growth. So I'm really excited for what I am going to be doing, but I'm really going to miss working at the library and with the trustees and everything. So I appreciate your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And the other item, I had emailed trustees over the weekend, seeing as how we are now in a transitionary period and temporarily without a board clerk, if trustees and staff that attend committee meetings could stay on after this meeting so that we can go over our schedules and try to schedule as many committee meetings as possible to save the back and forth of the emails. If we can just do it tonight while we're here, that would be great. So if everyone could stay on after we adjourn, that would be much appreciated so we can try to get these meetings scheduled. And with that, if nobody has any further business, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Tom. And second,
or whoever. I have to leave.
Second.
That was Brenda, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Oh, yes.
we can go to board docs to vote.
Yes.
Have a good evening, everyone. I have to get off.
Same here. Good evening.
Good night, Jerry.
Good night, Jerry.
And the motion carries.
We'll stop recording. There.